Why am I not getting enough clients? This was a question that I used to ask myself all the time when I was younger and first starting out my barber career, especially before owning a barbershop and having my own barbers of myself. I just remember sitting in my chair scrolling through Instagram and just waiting for walk-ins. So I want to make sure that you guys aren't doing what I'm doing, especially if you're early into your career. I want to make this as easy as possible to understand. And I also want to change the mindset of anybody who's starting out in the career so that way you're not reactive and you're actually proactive. These three things that I changed completely skyrocketed my clientele from being to 5 a day to 20 a day. And then that also allowed me to increase my prices so that way I can find a happy medium to only do 8 to 10 a day for shorter days on top of that. So what are these three things? I want to go over the three different topics that really helped me change my mindset in order to gain more clientele. First mindset we have to change is going to be attitude. So attitude, a settled way of thinking or feeling about someone or something, typically one that is reflected in a person's behavior. So let's go over some characteristics of a positive attitude. We have optimism, gratitude, and resilience. And in complete contrast to that, we have the negative traits of attitude, which are going to be negativity, pessimism, and blaming circumstances. So how did my younger self at 17 years old to now 27 years old owning a barbershop and having employees of myself? How did I change that? How did I change the mindset of how having a negative attitude and changing that into a positive attitude? The quickest way I learned to have a positive attitude is just to put myself in the client's shoes, especially when they're walking in. Put yourself in the person's shoes and be honest with yourself. If you would actually enjoy the company of somebody who has a negative attitude, would you rather enjoy the company of somebody who has a positive attitude? One of the ways that we can really illustrate a positive attitude is when somebody's walking into my barbershop, I make sure that I greet them, I have a friendly conversation, I smile, and I offer a complimentary drink. So whenever somebody sees me, no matter the time of the day, even of outside circumstances, whatever's happening outside in the world, as soon as they come to my barbershop, I make sure to be as optimistic as possible because I know that when they're coming in there with their own problems, and as soon as they want to come to get their haircut, it should be acting as almost a therapy session. On top of having an optimistic view when my client is coming in, I also make sure that I show as much gratitude as possible, especially when it comes to a repeat client. So not only is it important for the client to come in, it's also very important that the client continues coming in. So we're always looking at the retention value. Especially when you're doing walk-ins, you have to understand that that one walk-in can tell 2 other people, and then it'll have a 2x multiplier, and then those 2 people will tell 4, then 8, then 16, then 32. It just depends on how well and how positive your attitude towards that person was. The thing I always tell my employees, especially when it comes to gaining new clientele and retaining clientele, what people don't tell you is that the haircut is only 40% of the job. The other 60 is to have a positive attitude and make sure that the client is accepted and grateful for actually being in your chair. They also want to make sure that they have a good experience so that way they can tell other people about you. Side note, for having a positive attitude, it also allows you to increase your prices because people want a positive experience and they're willing to pay for that positive experience. So following attitude, then we have etiquette. That's another mindset that I had to change when I was younger. So let's quickly define etiquette. A customary code of polite behavior in society or among members of a particular profession or group. Let's go over some of the positive traits of good etiquette. We have honesty, politeness, and general respecting of others. In stark contrast to that, we have rude, obnoxious, inconsiderate, and disrespectful. So before we get into why you need to have good etiquette, I'm pretty sure that anybody's listening to this would understand that they rather have somebody be polite to them than negative towards them. I just want to give a quick story of how I noticed this when I was younger. I used to work in this barbershop that was constantly busy. We had 15 people to a chair, so we had 15 barbers at all times, constantly busy. I truly learned a lot from this barbershop, and I don't regret going there at all because I actually learned positives and negatives from this barbershop. And one of the things that I did learn the most was etiquette at this barbershop. Not good, but bad. And I realized that if I learn the bad, I can just do the opposite of what this barbershop did and I would be successful. So in my early days working at this barbershop, I remember I didn't talk much, especially because everybody else around me was so much older and they had so much experience that I didn't want to be the outcast. And I don't want to be the one like, hey, why are things the way they are? I remember one of the barbers, he got done the haircut. He turned around, he looked at the client that walked in, but he saw this specific person. He had a disgusted face and he didn't want to take him. So instead of saying anything, he looked at him, had a disgusted face, turned around and went on an 1.5-hour lunch break. I look around and seeing if anybody noticed, and of course nobody did because they were either talking to somebody on their phone or they had their headphones in listening to music. So then I look at the client and I said, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm not as experienced, but I can take you next if that's okay. Again, not being that experienced, but just showing a good amount of etiquette right there where I wasn't rude. I was trying to be polite so that way I could get the person that was actually next in line in this walk-in situation and just having a simple conversation with, I'm sorry that happened to you. Would you mind coming to me even though I'm less experienced? He sat in my chair. We had a great conversation. I had great attitude. I had showed good etiquette and I was being polite. I actually asked questions about his day. I tried to befriend him and I wanted to make sure that he didn't remember that bad taste in his mouth of the barber walking away even though he was next in line. And even though my haircuts weren't as good as some of the other barbers around, just because I showed good etiquette, that person kept coming back. Every 2 weeks, it was just constant on the dot. Every 2 weeks, he would just be coming back left and right. Not only that, but at $10, $15 a haircut, I remember getting $5, $10 tips. It was half or as much as the haircut, and I thought this was big bucks at the time. 19 years old, I mean, like 30 minutes, you get $20, $25, half hour. To me, that seemed like it was a lot at the time. But just because I showed any type of decency, any type of good etiquette, that person didn't mind that the haircut didn't have to be perfect. But because I just showed good etiquette, that person was able to come back and actually understand like, hey, yes, this place may be a little rough around the edges, but at least there's one person in here who shows any type of decency and respect. Now, before we move on to our next point, I want to quickly add these tips in order to get more clientele to boost up your schedule. It can only go so far depending on your shop location. So the shop that I previously just mentioned, if your shop is rough around the edges, the tips that I'm telling you will help and you will get clientele. You have to take a look at where you are in your location and you might have to readjust into a different location and see if you can have somebody that's a little bit more upscale and upstanding and has the bar raised a little bit higher. Because even though I'm telling you these tips and you can gain more clientele and you can boost your schedule, a good majority of it is depending on where you work. You can only get so far based on your location and based on the clientele that comes along with it. And I quickly want to add that these things aren't specifically in order. All these three things need to be encompassed within each other so that way they can work in unison. Value. The regard that something is held to deserve, the importance, worth, or usefulness of something. I want to go over some positive traits of valuing your client. So we have being kind and compassionate, being a good listener, dependability, and having integrity. And when it comes to negative, we have lack of effort, lack of support, and lack of trust. So you have positive attitude, you have positive etiquette. Now we just need to focus in on having positive values, especially when it comes to your client. When your client sits down and you do their haircut and having a conversation with them, are you being genuine? Do you actually care? Are you able to change your mindset enough to where you actually care for your client, or are you gonna treat them as like another dollar bill? The best example I have of this is if anyone's ever bought a car or you hear anybody talk about car salesmen, people tend to not like them because they understand that they're negative and they don't value the person that's coming in to buy the specific car. They're always just trying to make a sale. They only view as a specific dollar. Yes, there can be good car salesmen who actually are genuine, who care about you as a person. At the end of the day, especially when it comes to that large of an item, people tend to talk negative on the salesman, where they want to get a specific package and they're just funneling so many different things. How do we show that we actually value our client so that way they can come back and that way they can tell other people about us, right? There's different steps that you could take to show value in your client. One of the main ones that I like doing is actually taking the time to learn about my client. So I want to make sure that I befriend them as much as possible. I want to make sure that next time they come in, I have their name down. I want to make sure that I know the haircut that they want, so we memorize the haircut so they don't even have to ask. I get to know them a little bit better, and I want to make sure that I treat them almost as if they were my friend. Because if you think about it, even in your own personal life, your best friend didn't become your best friend on day one. It took a while for you guys to understand each other, in order for you guys to value each other, in order to tell you guys your secrets, your day-to-day, and then you became your best friend. It's the same thing in the same aspect when it comes to valuing your client. You want to make sure that you befriend them and you actually take the time to be genuine and care about the client. So that way it becomes more of a relationship rather than just another dollar bill. A good start in order to befriend your client is just ask simple questions. How's your day? What are you interested in? Do you watch sports? What kind of movies do you like? Just simple, nonchalant questions that anybody can answer with any type of effort. And you may run into some people who are shy at first and who are a little bit introverted and they don't want to exactly answer the question. And that's completely fine. They don't have to answer the question and you can leave them alone. It's the simple process of actually going about doing these things. Even if they don't give you an answer, at least they know that you tried and try to have a conversation with them so that way they can show some type of value. They may not answer the question. They'll try to come back and book with you, but at least you try to engage with them and try to befriend them as much as you could. Again, we're looking at the majority, and the majority of people tend to want to have a conversation, especially when they're coming into a barbershop, because it's very personable. One thing that I love doing in order to show that I'm valuing my client is after I get done the haircut, I continue the conversation as I walk them towards the register as they're paying me. Not only am I shaking their hand and continue the conversation, but when they're going to the register, I continue having conversation, continue to let them know that it's not just another dollar bill to me, and showing that I value them as a patron. Because the complete opposite of that, if we were to go in, get the haircut, and just go to the register and not even bother to shake their hand, not ask them if they want a complimentary drink, and just treat them like another client, we could have done the best haircut in the world, but showing that little aspect right then at the end of the haircut that you didn't value the client, that client is going to have a bad taste in their mouth, especially when they're walking out the door, considering the fact that should they even come back to the barbershop. I can't think of a single instance of where I'd rather have somebody who's negative by my side or talking with than I would if they were positive. It just takes so much work to be negative, and it takes so much work to want to complain and hate and just have a negative attitude. It becomes kind of depressing to the point of you start questioning these people who are negative and have a negative attitude, and they're always complaining about something. It's why are you so mad? What in the world is bothering you so much that you have to bring it into the workplace? That you have to spread it around and affect the environment of people that you're working with. If you change these 3 different things and alter your mindset to be more positive, there's no way you could lose. With that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys want to see more content like this, please subscribe. If you guys have any questions and any concerns about the topic that we just talked about, please leave it down below and I'll try to engage as much as I can. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time.